Hi guys, and welcome back to the Kerbal Space Program. Today we're rejoining Jeb and Bob on the surface of Minmus at their second landing site. If you recall from last episode, we left off with Von Braun's second landing on Minmus, and now they're just heading back home with a ship full of science, and hopefully they'll manage to return safely. Now, if you remember from last episode, we were using a two-part mission, so we need to first rendezvous with the lander, which is what we're doing right now. Not lander, the orbiter and return craft. So we're just setting up a rendezvous there. You can see as we come in, I'm looking for the spaceship, but I can't see it. So I think I need to. It's either in the astronaut complex or the tracking station. You need to unlock a node, and that shows you these yellow markers for vehicles, but I miss it. Anyway, we come back round, and this time we line up for an approach. Now, we didn't actually have enough science, or we didn't unlock the node when we launched this mission for RCS systems, so we're going to have to dock purely with our thrusters, and we do our little trick where we get a mech Jeb to hold attitude pointing towards the target for the other vessel, and then it's simply a case of cancelling out all the lateral velocity and then burning towards the target, which is reasonably simple given you have enough control authority with the reaction wheels, which we do, which is quite nice because of that big command pod there. So I just need to briefly address to you guys why the episode was so late. The main reason was I was on holiday in Finland for a couple of weeks, but after that I moved house right away, so I'm now in my new flat. But the problem with that was, obviously moving took me a couple of days, and it was all the associated stress and all the rest of it, but I don't currently at this time have internet, so when this episode comes out it'll probably be on the 19th. Yeah, and I'm currently recording this on the 9th, and I won't have internet for about 10 days, which is absolutely awful, but at least I can still play and record KSP in that time. Anyhow, back to the mission. We're just bringing our apoapsis down, making sure it's grazing through the atmosphere, and we're just getting a wee burn home. So, as you've probably noticed, we're leaving our lander in orbit. Now, the reason for this is I envision future missions being able to use this, maybe scrap it or refit it and maybe even use it again, because the lander is capable of landing on Minmus again if you give it some fuel. So my hope is that future missions will be able to benefit from the hardware. And anyhow, there's no point in really getting rid of it. There's no real danger of the Kessler syndrome in Minmus orbit, given the low energy of the orbits. Now we just need to see if all our testing has paid off as we come in for our re-entry there. Coming in from this high in orbit, or this eccentricity, if we flip out and present the wrong side of the spacecraft to the airflow, our kerbals will most definitely burn up. So it is pretty critical that that our ship is aerodynamically stable. But I'm fairly sure that our testing proved quite conclusively that we'll survive. But yeah, we'll just have to see. So we're just getting rid of our orbiter stage there, and just coming in for the re-entry. It looks pretty nominal so far. We're getting that slight lean that we discussed earlier, but aside from that, there's no real problems being caused at all. And you can see that we're rotating around our axis, and we're doing that just so that we distribute the heat evenly, just in case stuff does start to overheat. But it looks pretty nominal right now, and it looks like we're coming in fine. So if this vessel comes in and lands properly, it will really have proven itself to be quite a reliable ship. And that's great, because my vision for this ship originally was a kind of multi-purpose explorational vessel that can go around the entire Kerbin system, land on the moon and Minmus, and return 2 Kerbals without any sort of problem. Kind of the workhorse of the fleet, if you like, at least for this early stage of exploration. And it will save us a lot of time trying to develop other vessels and stuff. And certainly by leaving the landers around around Minmus, we'll be able to have a reusability aspect to it as well, which is great. And as you see there, we come down fine, no problems, and we managed to get around 650 signs from that trip alone, which is really great. Yeah, and we get a bunch of funds as well recovered, and of course the Kerbals get their XP as well. So I spend way too long on this window for some reason, but eventually I close it, and we get to have a look at contracts. So I get one to dock 2 crafts in orbit, and one to plant a flag on Minmus, and then I run out of space. So we can have a look at the other contracts I've accepted here, just all from last episode, and now we get to spend that hard-earned science that we got. So I decide to invest in some Habitation, so the hitchhiker storage container. I grab the Advanced Exploration, which is science equipment. I grab Advanced Electronics, which gives me more electronics, solar panels and such, because I suspect that we're going to have trouble sustaining all that habitation without proper electronics, without proper power generation capabilities. And then I decide on getting scanning tech, because we need to launch some scan satellites and learn about the planets that we're going to try and colonize. So here we are launching the GS Bluford Scan satellite. It's a very simple probe with all the scanning technology that it needs to find out about biomes and basic resource distribution. It's launched upon a small rocket, but it has asparagus staging, and it has the capability to basically get anywhere within the Kerbin system. So we can explore Kerbin, the Moon, or the Mun, and Minmus as well, all in one go. The satellite is named after Guyon Bluford Jr. I don't know if I've said that correctly. He was an American aerospace engineer, ex-Air Force pilot, and an astronaut. In total, he flew 4 space flights aboard the space shuttle, and he's known for being the first African American in space. So I'm going to launch 3 of these crafts in total, one for Kerbin, one for the Mun, and one for Minmus. But there's no point in me showing all 3 of the launches, so I won't. Anyhow, we get an alarm clock for our Terestial Rover from last episode. So we're just going to start bringing it down to the surface of the Mun. The reason that it is a rover and is using landing gear from a plane is that at the time of launching I didn't actually have enough science to buy actual wheels. And the contract states that I should put a rover onto the surface of the Mun, and to complete the contract I would just have to change the designation of the probe, but I thought that would be very cheaty of me, so I decided to put wheels on it anyway. And I do think that if I tried to use the wheels it would be able to work, just I end up not using it because, as you see here, I have enough fuel, so I thought, why bother driving it across the surface when I can fly, essentially. So we grab a bit of science here, we transmit it all, and that, we can see in the top right hand corner I got the completion for the contract, and I decide to lift off. And I have a look on the map, and I decide that the most likely source of another biome is in the big black crater over there, which is quite a distance away, but I don't actually know where the biomes and how the biomes are distributed, so I think it's the only surefire way of getting even more science. And you can see here as I start to come down I realize that the surface details are growing quite quickly, and I start burning, but of course it's too late, and in a very Kerbal fashion my ship spontaneously disassembles. Though not entirely spontaneously, it's quite a prolonged and painful process in this case. Anyhow, before we launch any more manned missions, we need to explore the viability of long-term habitation. Specifically, how I need to get to grips with how the habitation mechanics of this mod actually work. So to do this, we're going to be launching the Van Allen space station, obviously in separate parts. So this is going to be the core. This will house the hitchhiker storage container, and of these big capulas, which is a part that gives a multiplier to habitation, so it should extend our hab time to quite a significant value. It also has some life support on board, and it should sustain our Kerbals for the amount of time that they're up there. Now, as you can probably tell, I have just discovered the CameraTools mod, which is an excellent mod and allows me to get these kind of fly-past shots. And while I went a little overboard with it for the first launch, I'm starting to get more sensible using it, and I'm pretty proud of the way that these sequences are coming together now. And you can see there, as I attach the booster, we lose a tail fin, I think. However, that doesn't stop us from getting into orbit. The spacecraft, of course, is named after James Alfred Van Allen. He was an American space scientist at the University of Iowa, and he was instrumental in establishing the field of magnetospheric research in space. He, of course, had the famous Van Allen belts named after him, following their discovery by his instrument, the Geiger-Müller tube. And they were aboard the satellites, the Explorer 1 and Explorer 3. So yeah, that was him. Important guy. And now he gets to have a Kerbal station named after him. So now that we have everything deployed on our station, it's starting to look quite pretty. And we can get a little IVA of the lovely inside of that capula. It's very nicely designed. Very red as well, I don't know why. We bring up the life support window and we see that we've got 1 year and 300 days and about 300 days of food left. So now that we know it's working, we can start to send up some functional parts. Now, our first launch contained 2 scientists, so now we just need to launch one of these labs, and we can hopefully get some data and get processing, because these labs multiply the amount of science that you can get by 10 or something crazy like that. So as you can see, I'm getting better and better at putting these camera sequences together, and I get a really nice wide angle shot there of the launch, which I'm pretty pleased with. So I think I'll make this the kind of standard format for launches now. You can see there, I get a cool fly past. Now with this ship, we're going to have to be quite careful because I haven't actually put any crew in it at all. It's all just running off a probe, so we need to be careful about not running out of electric charge as we come around. You can see here I'm using that Hullcam right now to get a nice shot of the booster separation, which this time occurs without incident and looks quite pretty. We get a nice fly past there as well of the ship. Now all that's left to do is to get into orbit, and we need to plan our rendezvous. And I didn't wait for the space station to come round, so we're going to have to wait a while. But at this point we can warp over to one of our scan satellites, the GS Bluford, that is around the moon, and we can bring it in. Now I was hoping to get one of these contracts for putting a satellite around the moon. So I get it into the right orbit, and I'm confused as to why I can't get the contract. But as it happens, you require a Science Junior container to get the contract completed. So I just decided to get it into a polar orbit at the right altitude instead, and we can just get scanning. So I get the Kethane scanner running, and I do some resource scans as well, and we can get that the ScanSat mod part running as well, which eventually generates you a nice biomap, which is really brilliant for exploring a body for the first time. Now I have been getting some problems from the Kethane mod. I can only scan for Kethane. It doesn't do it out of focus, so I can only scan when I'm in the vessel focus, which I find really irritating. So essentially, to scan an entire body, I'd have to sit with a vessel and warp around the planet for, I don't know, like 30 days or something, which really sucks if you've got multiple missions going on. So I suppose what I'm going to have to do is just every time I've got a warp, I'll just have to switch to the satellite, which I'm trying to use to scan for Kethane. So you can see here we're just coming in with our science station or our science core, and we come in a little too fast and we bounce back off. But that's fine, we can just thrust a bit more. And you can see there that MechJeb is getting our space station core to point in the right direction as well, because we still don't have any RCS. Now, with the discovery of wheels, we can start to work on a new rover design. I haven't given this a cool name yet because it's just going to be going around Earth. But what I'm going to be testing is the Voyage mod, which is a mod which essentially you can program in a set of coordinates and it'll drive your rover off focus, which is brilliant. So we're just testing the maneuverability of the rover right now, and just grabbing a bit of the science that is scattered around the KSC. There's actually quite a lot, quite a surprising amount of science around the KSC if you know where to look, but it requires quite a lot of effort. Well, I mean, not really, but it's not actually interesting to watch, so I don't think I can be bothered. Anyway, I get the rover programmed in for one of the anomalies. I'm using the ScanSat to get the coordinates of the anomaly, and then I'm programming a waypoint, and then all I need to do is set to active waypoint, and then it generates one of these red squiggly lines, which is a route that it takes. So I'm quite confused as to why it isn't driving itself there, but it turns out it just drives off focus. Now, off camera, I didn't show you guys, but our Van Allen station consumes a huge amount of electric charge. So much, in fact, that we're unable to even charge it when we're on the light side of Kerbin, which is a real problem because without electric charge, we can't support life support, and it drains within a matter of minutes, which really sucks. So what we have here is a power unit, essentially, because I don't actually have any proper solar panels or large solar panels unlocked yet. So what I have here is essentially a set of struts with the second smallest solar panel, which is the most powerful solar panel I have available to me, essentially stuck on a girder, and I'll have to assemble it when I'm in orbit. So for some reason the Voyage mod is now generating paths even when I'm in orbit, which I think is a bug, but hopefully that'll get sorted soon, and it's not that bad a glitch. So you can see here we're just lining ourselves up and coming in, and we're gonna have to do a lot of docking this episode. I have 4 individual girders, each with panels on them strapped to the side of this spacecraft, as you can see. So each one of these has their own probe core. So I'm going to take each one and dock them onto the side, and essentially build up two arms of solar panels, which will all face the same way, and hopefully that will be enough power generation to outweigh the amount of power that we're using to run all the life support. You guys now get to watch a very cut down and sped up version of me trying to get to grips with the Navy Fish docking port alignment indicator, which was in reality a very long and drawn out process. It took me absolutely ages to get this all stuck together and docked, but I guess in the end it was probably worth it when you see the final product. So you can see there I not only need to worry about the attitude and position, but I also need to worry about the roll, because if one of these panels is rolled in the incorrect way, it will trigger me to the end of my days. You can see there the first one comes in a bit wobbly, but by the second and third attempt it's looking a bit better. You can see here this one comes in a bit squint, but I am past caring at this point. At this point even my OCD is overcome, but eventually we managed to get the last bit aligned, and we managed to come in for a docking. And in my opinion the end result is worth it. Aside from that one strut that is slightly rolled the wrong way, that will trigger me until the end of my days, but I don't really care at this point. I think it generally looks really good. Obviously if I had infernal robotics working, it would have been super easy to do something like this. But for some reason I cannot get it to work on 1.2.2. Perhaps when we upgrade it, it will work fine. But yeah, you can see in the resource window we're generating enough power to sustain all the life support, and the mission is a success. As we check back with the Terestial Rover, we realise it's gone into a new biome, so we can grab some science as it passes through. And I get a contract to evacuate Valentina Kerbin, but it expires in about a year, so we're just going to leave her up here for now. We do plan on bringing her back in that time anyway. So I think in the future, or next episode, I want to add an additional stage to our Van Allen station and send it up to Minmus, because there's no science left for us to get around Kerbin. And I might as well, seeing as it's a viable station. So I grabbed some advanced fuel systems so we can build a big rocket, but that'll all be happening next episode. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.